Okay, everybody, we're ready to start, please. We can all sit down. Okay. I'll give everyone 30 seconds, shall I? Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Licensing Committee. My name is Councillor James Gibson, and I'd just like to say a special thanks to everyone for the early start as well at 9:30, but it's a busy agenda and an important agenda, so it's important that we had that extra time. If we go across now to members, please, if you can introduce yourselves. Councillor Martin.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Martin from Roundhay Ward.
Good morning, Isaac Wilson, Councillor for Wheatwood Ward.
Luke Farley, Labour Councillor, Bermondsey and Richmond Hill.
Councillor Holroyd Case, Ardsley and Robin Hood.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Ascot Ali for Gibton and Hare Hills.
Morning, everyone. Councillor Tom Hinchcliffe, Bramley and Stanley Ward.
Good morning, Alice Smart, Armley Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Ed Carlisle for Hunslet and Riverside.
Good morning, Councillor Rick Downs, Otley and Yeadon Ward.
Councillor Sam Firth for the Harewood Ward. Councillor Neil Buckley, All Woodley Ward.
Councillor Dawn Sabry, Pudsey Ward.
Ashing, thank you very much, members. I'll just take the opportunity to remind everybody in the room that we are now live on webcast as well, and I'll ask the clerk to introduce agenda items number 2 to 5, please.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against refusal of inspection of documents. Under agenda item 2, access to information, and there are a number of items here that might fall under this. So item number 9, appendices A and B, the Licensing Act 2003 Regulation 28 report, have been marked as exempt from publication under the provisions of the Access to Information Procedure Rules 10.4, 1, 2 and 5, as the information relates to an individual or might identify an individual or contain information in respect to which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in any legal proceeding. So the committee is asked to note that when that information is discussed, the committee will need to resolve to go into private session and the webcast will pause or stop at that point. The committee will also note that the reports on both agenda item 7, the Leeds Festival 2023 debrief, and agenda item 8, the 2023 event management plan method of approval reports, also make reference to the fact that in their discussions, members may wish to go into private session again. So if you do have any comments or questions that you feel may verge onto discussing confidential or exempt information, please flag that up and we'll collect them together and the session that the committee can go into private session at that point. Thank you. Under agenda item number 3, late items, there's no formal late items of business, but members should be in receipt of some emailed and paper copies of PDFs that were sent out for agenda item 7, the Leeds Festival 2023 debrief. This was additional submission on behalf of Eurocabs and an additional submission on behalf of National Highways. Agenda item number 4, please could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest you may have? I can't see any notified, thank you. Agenda item number 5, apologies for absence. Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Hutchison have given their apologies for today. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so I'll move now to agenda item number 6, please, which is the minutes from the last meeting held on the 1st of August 2023. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? Anybody like to raise anything? No, if not, can I please have a nod that you're all happy to approve them? Yes. Excellent. Thank you very much, members. In which case, we'll now move on to agenda item number 7. And I just want to reiterate the point that was already raised as well around exempt items. So everything in red in your agenda packs, if we can raise that, please, in closed session. What we'll do is we'll go through. So we'll go through from Festival Republic and then SAG Partners. Obviously, you can ask questions to officers as well. Just keep your powder dry if there's anything that you think needs to be exempt, and we'll discuss it in the closed session. Okay, just be mindful of all that. So we'll move now then to agenda item number 7 proper, and I invite colleagues from entertainment licensing to introduce the item, please.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair. So this is in relation to the debrief for Leeds Festival 2023, where the licensing committee is asked to hear feedback following this year's event from representatives of the event organiser, Festival Republic, and partners of the Safety Advisory Group. Also available today is Councillor Harrington, who is the chair of the Ward and Parish Council Working Group. Members should expect to hear about the additional data captured during this year's event, possibly during closed session, and the new measures introduced to improve the safety of those attending the festival. Following the event, various debrief meetings have already taken place, such as the Ward and Parish Council Working Group, the traffic subgroup, the formal debrief of the Safety Advisory Group, and the meeting to discuss the salvage operation, which was attended by Councillors Wilson and Carlisle and representatives of various charities. Apologies have been given by National Highways who were unable to provide representation at today's meeting. However, a written statement has been provided for the committee's consideration, which is appended as a supplementary item to the agenda. The committee will also note a representation from the Hackney Carriage Trade, also appended as a supplementary item to the agenda, giving the committee sight of a number of proposals put forward by the trade. The intention is to hold a future meeting with the trade and relevant agencies to discuss the contents of the representation, and today's meeting may be seen as a good opportunity to seek interest from licensing members to be involved. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I've just to make the point, I've had some good feedback from taxi drivers about this year's arrangements in relation to the festival, and for the pickup points and the allotted compounds, and I'd like some assurance that going forward the festival will carry on with those arrangements. And in relation to the email from Ghulam Nabi, there's some important points raised in there that are valid, and I'd like to see those taken forward through this meeting. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Martin. I just reiterate, I guess, what Matthew said, that we are holding a meeting to discuss that. I'll let taxi and private hire licensing officers comment if they wish. And of course, you can ask the same question again to Festival Republic as well, and get that reassurance. But a meeting is being set up with Lucy Kinsella. Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'd just like to say as well a big thank you to all the SAG partners and Festival Republic that are here today, and for the early start as well. And welcome students from Leeds Beckett University. We've got journalism students with us, so bear that in mind when you're asking your questions. Okay, we'll move now on to the presentation from Festival Republic, please.
Chair, good morning. Melvin Benn, Festival Republic. Chair, thank you for inviting us. I guess we have a number of slides, and Lucy will take you through those slides. Some of them have got quite a lot of detail, some have got a little less. But I guess from my point of view, I would say the start point is that the festival is always under scrutiny from your own officers, Chair. Of course we are. That's part and parcel of what your officers do, as well as the emergency services and other public bodies that put us under scrutiny, appropriately so. But this year, I think, following the tragic death of David Cellino in 2022, we were under I felt significantly greater public scrutiny. I think a lot more people in the public were more interested in what was going on, and appropriately so. And I have no concern about that, of course. And we put a lot of additional plans that were well in the making from most of this year, as only too well, Chair. We presented, I think, in January or February this year, the beginning of those plans. And by and large, I thought those plans, paid dividends. By and large, I thought we had good positivity from the changes that we made. in terms of the public, the customer discussion, the customer feedback, the customer interaction, and the opportunity for customers to get support as and when they needed it. So by and large, I thought they went, pretty well. Of course, the point about the taxis also went very well in terms of the position of the carpet, their position in the taxi rank order worked well for us, and the taxi team have already thanked me personally, and I can give that assurance that if that is the position that they want in the future, it's the position that they can take. We're pretty open about that in that sense of it. There is a lot more to discuss, obviously, in respect of the detail around the traffic plan and the licensed taxis interaction with the traffic plan. But as has been discussed, and certainly from my point of view, I would much rather see that in a separate traffic meeting around taxi planning rather than in the general meeting of today. I think we've had incredible success with the traffic plan over the last 2 years, 3-4 years in particular, and that has come from detailed planning in those sit-down meetings, which are specifically about traffic. And it feels to me that this is the best way forward to go through that. And we'll go into that very much with an open mind. And we have no fixed one way or the other that it should be this or should be that. What I think we have to do is recognise the success of the traffic plan and hope that that no changes that are made will prove detrimental to that, Chair. Other than that, I'd very much like to hand over to Lucy to go through the slides, if that's okay. Thank you.
Good morning. So as Melvin mentioned, we've got quite a few slides to get through. I'm going to start by showing my screen, and hopefully everyone can then see that as well on the screen in front of you there.
Lucy, there's not going to be anything exempt in the slides, is there? Not like, can you remember last time when we had an exempt item that came up on the slides? Because this is for the being shown to the public, and the slides will be public as well.
Apologies. Yes, everything within the slides being shared, we understand they're public. Right, so to remind everyone, this was this year's lineup. We didn't sell out Leeds Festival this year. We were selling right up until the point of the festival. We had no major cancellations as we saw in 2022. And as we know this year, the split between the weekend and days was different to what we've seen in the past. This year we did introduce a more robust system to count the number of under 18-year-olds that came through the gates at Leeds Festival, and we have got that information to share with you a little later on. We have organised the slides into 8 sort of key areas in terms of what we discussed at the meeting in August, and also it's the way that we've taken the debrief that was held on the 6th of October with SAG partners. So we'll start with fire safety. As you all know, there was a new policy change for us this year. We banned campfires completely across the site, but we did allow small gas canisters. As shared at the August meeting, we continued with all of the safety messaging around fires. And what we saw was that we only had 7 reported fires versus 54 the year before. So that was a real positive for us, and it's something we're going to carry forward into next year. The point noted there around the communications between West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service and Midland Fire was that one of the, it was raised at the SAG meeting, that one of the calls that came in was perhaps not quite correct. So that is just something that we are looking to improve for next year, that communications and how we do that. So alcohol management and tobacco control this year was the first year we introduced Challenge 25. So you can see from the figures there, the number of challenges was significantly up from the year before. And we put that down to introducing Challenge 25 as opposed to 21. We've got a really good working relationship now, I think, between Seamus, the event licensing team, and also the event licensing team that are appointed by Central Fusion, who run our bars. And we've just listed here as well the number of over 18 wristbands that were issued this year. And not to be confused with the under 18s. This is a separate wristband exchange that's introduced to allow people to not have to carry ID around with them all the time. Something we plan to look at for next year as to whether or not it's required. So moving on to medical, welfare and safeguarding. A really strong working partnership between Leeds EMS, who are our chosen medical providers, I think, who ran the welfare in the arena and the campsites, and also the welfare crew who ran the 2 new campsite welfare points. They saw 816 people through those 2 new campsite welfare points, and we definitely see that as a success and a good change to what we had done previously with the safe hubs. So we plan to move that forward and look at the presence that we have within those 2 campsite welfare points. We held the daily safeguarding meetings on site, in which all of the partners were welcome to join. You can see there we had the 2 new support services for 2023, both Leeds-based groups. In addition, just to note, the drink spiking test kits, whilst they were sold and available on site, it was really minimal uptake, but just to feedback on it was something that councillors were interested in. And then lastly, that's just noted on there, the Look Out for Each Other campaign. That was a real success for us this year. I have got a few slides to take us through in a minute just to show how widely that was shown across the site. And like I say, it was seen as a real success for us. I think everyone or most people saw it, and it really did encourage a lot of the young people at the show to go and seek help if needed, or go and, speak to one of the support services that we had on site if needed. So these are the stats that you've got in front of you. This is how many people were seen through our medical tent versus what we had the year before. And again, off-site transfers versus the year before. The x-rays on site, we were able to x-ray 27 people in total. That was a new addition for 2023, at the suggestion of Yorkshire Ambulance Service, to make sure that our private medical company could actually do that on site. So again, we took that forward and were able to avoid then those off-site transfers to go and have to do x-rays off-site. You'll see from this slide here, these are all the different reasons that people come in to see the medics, whether that be the main medical, the arena medical, or even via some of the pit medical, which is next to main stage east and west. You'll see on there, there were 83 people seen for drugs related medical. Of those, just to give you a little bit of background in terms of how many of those were actually under 18, 42% of those, so 35 of the 83 were 16 and 17-year-olds. That is in comparison to 72 drugs related in 2022. So I think the message is definitely getting out there. People are going to ask for help when it's needed, but they're the figures that we take back and use to then learn and apply our plans for next year. You can see here the age of the patients at the site hospital. So whilst we've got a lot of 17-year-olds that have, the remaining 550 so are also over the age of 18. We've then got a breakdown of all the reasons of people that were transferred off-site. Also, just to share with you our help map, which we spoke about in the August meeting. Again, this lists all of the different places that the audience can go to and ask for help across the entire site, whether it be the arena or the campsites. These are the slides that I mentioned, just sharing the success of the Look Out for Each Other campaign. So these were, we held a FACT, so the Festival Advice Campaigns team, which is chaired by Dan Byrne from Leeds City Council Public Health. That was held in after the event, and again within that forum we shared the stats and how many impressions that particular campaign had on our audience this year. You can see that there's almost 2,000 views of the particular news article that was shared, and then also the safeguarding features that were listed on our website. You can see in the bottom right hand corner there just the impact as well that the messages have when we put them on our big screens. So that's an example of one of our main stages, and we had those on repeat throughout all of the changeovers. So they were there for people to see, and I think you would agree it would be very impossible not to see it. So we were really shouting about that. And then new for this year, we were able to introduce a bit of a competition where we encourage people to engage with the hashtag Look Out for Each Other. They were then given the opportunity to get their picture or shown on the screen. So that really, again, was something that was new for this year. The year before, we'd done it with some of our sustainability data. So this year, we just did a switch on that. So security and policing, again, as shared at the SAG debrief, and I'll let West Yorkshire Police go into a little more detail in terms of their feedback. But for us, we really did succeed in creating that hostile environment. At the August meeting, we were here with Nick Wallen who was ex-West Yorkshire Police, and he was there on site leading that for us, carrying through the campsite strategy that had been set and making sure that the separate covert teams were working, and that we're really able to sort of clamp down on anyone that's trying to sell drugs at the festival. You can see that there were 72 arrests in total. 82% of those were drugs related, the majority for possession with intent to supply. Evictions, again, we took a really hard line this year with evictions, whether it be across antisocial behaviour or any reason. If anyone was up to no good or not complying with our terms and conditions of the event, then we evicted them in line with our policy. So there were 213 evictions in total. In addition to that, we also issued some cautions. So people that are then taken to our eviction centre, it's agreed that they're allowed to stay at the event. That's quite a robust and tried and tested operation that we run in the eviction centre. You can see through the surrender bins, we had approximately £30,000 just over of drugs surrendered at each of the gates. So we had our 4 main entrances, and then we also have 2 smaller entrances as well. At each of those we had drugs dogs. New for this year, we put in large VMS screens which had the safety messages on repeat. We were really trying to deter anyone from sort of that last opportunity, as we shared at the planning meeting, that just don't bring them in with you. So we did see a success in those messages working and people leaving any sort of illegal items at the gate. Next, just to briefly speak about our air hubs, which we were new for this year for Leeds Festival. So they were located around the campsites. We had 16 in total. They really kind of, I think, we were able to work with local groups, and they really were embedded within that sort of campsite management structure that we now have. So we've got volunteers, security, stewards, and now the air hub teams that are able to just communicate with everyone in the campsites and be there 24/7. So that's something we'll look to grow, continue for next year. Sustainability. So we work within the 8 areas which were identified by the Green Nation Charter, which is a Live Nation policy and charter. I'm just going to share a few slides here. I won't go into them in too much detail. We have now set up, at the request of this group, a sustainability subgroup that have met already to debrief on this year's event, and we've now finalised the report that we've got, which shows how we are working towards meeting our targets and the incentives that we've got in place. So I will just quickly skim through these. But again, councillors that are interested, I can certainly share afterwards the data that we've now got. We're always trying to encourage people to travel to the festival via the shuttle bus or using a more sustainable method. And I think the shuttle bus is worth saying, we really do want to try and encourage for next year. It's the easiest and best way of getting to the festival, and the quickest way to get in and out as well. And we've seen as a real success the shuttle bus operation that ran in and out of Leeds city centre. We've got some, like I say, data here about the different recycling percentages that we were able to hit. We had a new partnership with Liquid Death, which sold water in cans this year. Again, that helped towards reducing plastic waste. And we've got a number of different initiatives there that were successfully carried out this year. Salvage operation, I think as Matthew mentioned, we have met with some of the councillors in this room to talk specifically about the salvage operation, and they invited some of those that were part of that themselves this year. So we have heard their feedback. We had met beforehand and improved the system to sign up and be part of the salvage team, and I think that we've now got a good sort of relationship and definitely open communications with those councillors who are keen to help us try and grow this. You know, ultimately we want people to take their tents home with them and take everything that they brought with them and leave no trace, but unfortunately people do leave things behind, and so we're just looking at how we can better the operation that we run post show. You can see this year we had the Climate Live bus at Leeds Festival, which just gave everyone an opportunity to engage with the campaign that they were running. Excuse me. And then this is also just some more messages that you can see that were shared around reducing carbon emissions, what some of our audience could do. They were shared on the app, also online and on posters around the festival. I should note as well that we run a bottle and cup return scheme at Leeds, and actually for this year the percentage, you can see it's really quite high, and it's across a lot of the festivals that we run, this is now one of the highest return rates. So we can see that the audience definitely are seeing the message and returning the cups and bottles where they can. Excuse me. Next and finally, just to bring you onto this slide, really the eco campsite. Again, when we met in August, I think we're up to about 4,500 sign-ups. I'm happy to share that by the time we'd got to the festival, we'd reached the capacity of 6,500. So a huge amount of people were really interested in staying at that eco campsite. Unfortunately, we did have then a few no-shows, but we were able to then accept people who hadn't registered in advance. So a little more work to be done around that. But you can see that, I mean, there's a picture there on the bottom of the difference really between, when they all were in their tent, and then most of them did then take their tents home with them. So we're really happy with that. And then this final slide around sustainability to just go into the local impacts, but like I say, we can pick up on this separately. Moving on to environmental health, and which includes noise. So for this year, we moved one of the campsite stages, but we saw no adverse effect from that off-site. We also then, following the August meeting, despite saying that we would get rid of the green campsite DJ, we did reintroduce that. So it's just to update everyone really that that ended up being the stage locations. We didn't have a particular village that was impacted at all. There were 11 complaints this year, which is still seen as not very many when you compare it to other events of a similar scale and to what sometimes we've had in the past at Leeds Festival. So we didn't really have anything, any other feedback from the environmental health team at Leeds City Council or from our own noise consultancy or food safety teams. Finally, traffic, as Melvin has said now, with the last few years, we've got a good traffic plan that's now cemented, and I think it's now just looking at the tweaks and what we can do for next year. So we met with the taxis a couple of weeks before the festival, took their feedback on board to change the internal layout. And I think there are now just some more suggestions to pick up outside of this. Besides the taxis, the one other area of the traffic management plan that we do recognise needs a little bit more improvement is the Sunday egress, so junction 44. Although we did put a lot of work and effort into and working with Highways England to create a new plan, that can still be improved. I think it's recognised that's just one of the areas that can work better. The A64 closure, that's pretty seamless now. I'm sure Nick will perhaps speak about it in a little bit more detail, but we know what we're doing with that, and I think it works well. So a few points for us to pick up for next year, but overall the traffic management plan for us works really well now at Leeds Festival. That is the end of our presentation and very an overview summary of this year's event, and sort of dipping into each of the different areas. And we have got more information to share, whether it be in closed session or at the request of any questions that come up. So that is it from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ben and Ms. Kinsella. And I just want to say as well, I said it at the last committee, thank you for all your engagement and commitment to improving this year's Leeds Festival. And I think the reports that I've received certainly testified to a festival that was safer. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done. And it was the engagement, and you were sincere in everything that you did, and I appreciate that. Right, let's move to committee members then, please. Do we have questions? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Firth then.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do appreciate Lucy and others' comments earlier, particularly about the clearance, but it has to be made sure that, of course, the eco camp is a very small part of it, but it's certainly, don't get me wrong, a good start, and let's hope it can continue from there. I know it was mentioned earlier, we don't really want to talk about transport, but I just wondered whether, Chair, this is the right point to ask a question about transport, in particular in relation to the submission from National Highways.
Was that submission?
No. Thank you very much. The Sunday night, as Lucy mentioned, was a problem, to say the least. I just wanted to ask, in terms of, we had a plan, we had set it in place. I remember the year before, obviously, we as ward members, as a ward member for the Harewood ward, were contacted when plans needed to be changed. Could I just ask, what was not fully implemented when the plan wasn't fully done or tested, to mean that it then had to effectively be chucked?
Apologies, would you mind just repeating the end of that, Councillor?
Thank you, Lucy. In relation to you said about the junction 44 roundabout quickly became overwhelmed and the plan was not fully implemented and tested. That's what Dave Skrupski from National Highways has stated. And I just wanted to ask, as a result, can you just confirm what part of the plan wasn't implemented and why? Obviously, in relation to the fact of what was done instead, or what we're going to learn from that to ensure we can improve for the future.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of work was put in to try and create a plan that involved a lot of people and manual change on that junction 44 roundabout, and including the slip road off the A1M. When we say it wasn't tested, we're only able to test that plan when we've got the festival live and that amount of people leaving, whether it be the south car parks or the different areas at that time. So that's in reference to the testing of the plan. We have discussed it in further detail at the traffic management subgroup, in which Dave Skupski was present, and our off-site traffic coordinator, Andy Pennington. I think what they've taken back is that there needs to be one agency that does oversee that full plan. So we had West Yorkshire Roads Policing team working with National Highways, with our Festival Republic team, and there wasn't one nominated person that would that was necessarily making the final call. So I think when it says that certain points weren't implemented, it was a joint decision on the ground to not say open the slip road or keep one of the junctions closed, but it was very much we wanted it to work without relying on traffic signals or anything like that. But I think, again, it was a learning, and Nick may have some points to feedback, particularly about junction 44 note. But that's what it was in reference to. I hope that answers your question, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. In the slides that you showed earlier, there was one, I believe, showed the carbon footprint of the event and how it had been reducing. Is it possible to bring that slide back up, please?
You'll have to bear with me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. It's concerning because there's a bit of a time delay. That's the question, yeah. Yeah, that's the one. So you can see that in 2022, it says that the emissions were 64, and then they've come back up to 171. Now, 171 is still below the yearly target, but I wonder why there was a threefold increase. What went so right last time that hasn't happened this time? Or is it a typo?
The difference was the availability of biodiesel that we couldn't source for this year's festival. We still sourced to the level and to the commitment that we had within the Green Charter and within the target, but there was a limited amount of biodiesel that we could source, and that was something that was problematic. That pushed that little back up again. We've already placed the order for next year.
Two other things. One is I think there was something like 27 X-rays took place. Now, without wanting to know any personal details, you were saying that part of the reason was effectively to triage people so that they didn't have to go to hospital. Do you have a figure for how many people that were able to stay at the festival that didn't then have to go to hospital as a result of the X-rays?
I do have that. If you give me a few minutes, I'll be able to come back to you with it. We've got hospital avoidances that is part of the data that's collated by the medical provider. And yeah, can certainly have a look for that for you.
My very final little comment was that it would be useful, I think, if members could have a copy of that presentation. One thing I did notice on the air hubs, I think you'd made a mistake where it said assistance response as opposed to, is it assistance information response? Yeah. Small typo, just to prove I was reading. Thank you, Chair.
You have better reading skills than we do, I think.
Councillor Carlisle, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for your work and your engagement on this. It's great. Apologies in advance. I've just got just a cluster of questions. I can, if you've had enough at a particular point, just stop me and then I can come back for more. But so I'm sure, so Councillor Wilson and I and others have had lots of, and you have talked lots about waste. I suppose, yeah, we had a really good Zoom, a few of us, after talking about the salvage operation. And I think clearly, and I think others have said it, there is a real appetite, not just to make the salvage operation really good, but actually just to do all we can to actually just drive down the waste in the first case. So I'd just be interested to hear what thoughts you have looking ahead to next year to really try to put maximum incentives in place just for people to actually get organised and take their stuff off site. One of the people on that Zoom who previously attended, I think it was Leeds Festival many years ago, before he became a responsible member of the community, he was saying that he just remembers a sense of humanity at its lowest ebb, which maybe is the sign of a good weekend. But he was just saying, so therefore people are just kind of almost just emotionally unequipped to get themselves together. And I suppose, what steps can you as a festival take to try to bring people up from the lowest ebb to try to enable them to take their stuff home? So that was one question. Another one was I didn't see it kind of specifically responded to in the reports, but certainly there was a concern I think it was the coroner's report about staff not intervening in 2022 in that particular situation. I was just wondering, was that specifically looked at and was that better this year? I just want to put on the record that I know, so Councillor Martin had heard positive feedback from, I don't know if it's just the Hackney cabs or private hire, but certainly I don't know how widespread it was. I heard some grumbles from the private hire trade and people saying they didn't bother going this year. And I suppose I had a question as to whether there was any sense of there not being enough kind of private hire provision. If that wasn't the case, then that's good, but that was just on the record. And finally, for now, I do have another few questions, but I've said enough. So you mentioned about people not really taking the spiking kits. I was just wondering, were there reports of, was there any kind of tracking of spiking? Did spiking happen as far as you know? And are you able to compare that to previous years?
Councillor Carlisle, thank you. Incentivising people to take stuff home is challenging, really. It's not least because it's quite difficult to identify those that are good and those that are less good, other than those that are in the eco campsite, and that that has, as Lucy pointed out, has proved to be a growing plus. So I haven't got an incentivization scheme in my head. I'm open to suggestions. The difficulty is proving the candidate did actually do what they are suggesting doing by taking everything home. That's the challenge around that incentivization, I think. It's easy with the eco camp, but people are 100% with it. I'll put my head around it. I'll see what I can come up with, but all suggestions welcome, and I will put it to the team to try and work out how we might best do that, really. But for the moment, I don't have an answer to that. In terms of concern around staff not intervening in 2022 that came out of the coroner's report, I think the staff not intervening was taken to its extreme in respect of the allegation in 2022, although there was certainly opportunity for staff to have intervened. And we introduced a very clear change of direction, change of policy, change of position across everybody, across our own staff, across the security staff, literally across the board, where intervention and the suggestion of going to ask for help or going to ask if they needed help, be that among each other, among our own staff, or be it towards the customers, was there. I don't know if Lucy's able to put her magic touch on the computer and find out the particular memo and the particular brief that went out, but it very much went out, Councillor Carlisle. And again, I no evidence of the dividends that it paid, but it certainly was a change of culture and a more proactive position in terms of intervening and checking on people than we've ever had before, and that has now become embedded in what is my company culture. In respect of points 3 and 4, I think Lucy will come back on that. I think I don't know if that's what is that.
Yeah, this is the news bulletin that went out the show week of the festival, like you say, to absolutely everyone.
Can you make it any bigger?
I don't think I can make it any bigger.
We can send this to you, councillors, which I think it will demonstrate pretty clearly the change of position that took place.
Just to reiterate, that went to absolutely everyone that works with us on site, whether it be a fun fair operator or a member of our site crew. So it really was to instill that change of culture, like Melvin says. Okay, so the next point on the taxis. So I know you specifically referenced the private hire vehicles specifically. We didn't have a problem as such that was highlighted to me, at least, regarding a lack of private hires, that people were able to book taxis. We did put public Wi-Fi down there, albeit limited. We need to improve on that for next year. But we didn't have any issues with private hire vehicles turning up. We did have issues with the lack of hackney carriages at some points, especially during normally about between midnight and 1:30 in the morning on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday evenings, when we had a queue for sort of 200 people waiting for taxis. But then as soon as they did come in, they were sort of swept up quite quickly. So there did appear to be a demand for taxis that was being met throughout the weekend. Your next point regarding the spiking, we did have reported cases of spiking. What we found that was the majority of those that were reported, once then the test came back, it was actually a negative result. Although we are very much encouraging people to come forward if they even suspect that they've been spiked at any point throughout the festival. So we do look at that data. I think it was 2 or 3 up from the year before. But like I say, we are encouraging people to come forward and ask for help. And if they have any sort of inkling that they think they may have been, we ask them to come forward. So we do log all of that. The police also have some data around the arrests that were made because of spikings that were reported. So that is all held and analysed each year.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Wilson. I can come back to you, Ed, in a bit. So.
Thank you, Chair. And echoing your comments, obviously, appreciating the engagement from Festival Republic, from my point of view in particular around sustainability, which I've had a lot of good conversations with you about. And actually, just as a point of record, I think the council in the last year has really increased and stepped up the support it is offering to people who are trying to volunteer to help with sustainability as well. Council sent caged vans up this year to the festival to help pick stuff up, which made a big difference. Most of that was distributed in Leeds. Some of it even was driven by van down to Morocco. So has a widespread impact. But also in terms of the formal support around having those conversations with Festival Republic, the licensing team have done a really good job of helping us engage. So I really appreciate that. I wanted to highlight a couple of the points that came up in our recent conversation, and just to check that they're at the forefront of your minds looking for the year ahead. So one of those which was really, so we had a meeting with salvagers. One really key point was the official confirmation that you can attend the festival to salvage comes pretty late. And I think the reason for that is that's when the details are available for like how to access and all that kind of thing. But for people planning ahead, particularly around a bank holiday, it's really useful to have advanced confirmation that you can definitely go. So I think just to kind of much earlier in principle, yes, you can attend and salvage, and then the details coming later would be really useful. I think that's a practical point. We also discussed some kind of on-site rental service for things like inflatable mattresses, or if that's not possible, there are some really good websites and things where you can rent camping equipment. We've got local libraries of things in Leeds, the Buy Out Library of Things in LS6, and now a new South Leeds Library of Things. So promoting those services ahead of a festival as well could help actually prevent waste. And then the last one, and this is a question, I promise. You mentioned at that meeting that you have a kind of green volunteers scheme where people can attend the festival and help people I think help people take down their tents and things like that, or do other things to help people recycle. I think we were all quite surprised about that actually. And there was some interest from the community to actually take part in that. We as a community can help promote that and try and bring people into that scheme. But can you say more about what you'll be doing in the year ahead to highlight that Green Volunteer Scheme? And also, how do you reward those volunteers? How do you interest them in participating in that scheme?
Councillor Wilson, thank you, and thank you for attending the festival. I appreciate your feedback on that. The official confirmation, I think it's a point of principle that we could confirm them earlier and send details later. I think that's an easy pickup and easy change, so thank you. The on-site rental service, the difficulty with that rental service is that in general materials are sold so cheaply that it's not cheaper but not much more expensive to buy and throw away than to rent, but we will certainly look into that and see what we can do, and I'll get that fed back into the sustainability group if that's okay. In terms of the Green Volunteer Scheme, again, I don't have the details of the incentives that we give them, other than being able to attend the festival. But again, we'll put that into the sustainability group and feed that back via that group, if that's okay.
Yeah, and if I could just say, the council again has a lot of expertise around volunteer engagement. We have voluntary action Leeds. It would be really good to get perhaps today an in principle agreement to work with the council, work with organisations like Voluntary Action Leeds, try and expand that if it's possible. And I would be very interested to see how you communicate it and how you, like I say, incentivise people to get involved. I wasn't quite clear whether it's volunteers who are attending the festival and take part in that, or whether it's people who come from outside who do that role.
It can be both, councillor. There's no reason for it to be one or the other. It can be both. And the more people locally that want to come and participate, the better for us. We like that. So it very much can be both. I think the scheme thus far has been based around people attending the festival. It's unusual to have a member of the council, or indeed a council, that want to engage to the level that you're suggesting, which is why it's been based around people attending. With the engagement that you're suggesting and or offering, being able to bring people in locally would be fantastic.
Great stuff. We'll leave that with you then, Councillor Wilson. You're doing a fantastic job from the sort of council side of driving forward the clear up, salvage and recycling. And yeah, I think there's been some significant improvements. So thank you for your work on that. Councillor Carlisle, did you have some more questions?
Yes, short ones this time. Just some things to note. So it might have just been me and my poor old phone, but I really struggled to get the app to work when I was on site at the weekends. Maybe it was just because there were tens of thousands of people all using it at the same time. But that, yeah, I just wondered if there's anything you can do around that, because obviously then if people have less information, then they're less able to, I don't know, navigate the event well and stay safe and all that kind of stuff. This is a pretty simple question. There might well be an easy answer, but so as a backup, were there also lots of physical maps at the I was at the event? I didn't see them, but they might have been there just to help people to kind of navigate the event. Was, again, possibly quite a simple one, is water readily available for people? Like obviously they can buy it, but if people are in a desperate state and just need water, was that available from the air hubs? And final thing was just so noticing that some more people accessed the medical support this year than last year. 1,600 instead of 1,400. I guess that could be seen as either as a positive or a negative. So either more people were accessing help was available, or there was just more need. And I just wondered if you had any comment on that. Many thanks.
Councillor Carlisle, I'm sorry your app didn't work. You are the only person thus far that has complained about it, but that so I think trip to Vodafone shop to get a new phone might not go amiss. Actually, in the main, the app is built on really low data usage in order that people can access it. We didn't get any significant complaints, but I will again check that bit of data. To my knowledge, we haven't had any, but I don't believe. I mean, I'm not going to swear to that 100%. It certainly hasn't been registered to me as something of concern, but I will pick up on it. The physical maps were spread around. They were at all of the air hubs. They were at the around the village area. Not so much in the arena, but certainly around the village area and all of the air hubs. The physical maps were displayed. Water. Very clearly displayed everywhere, but not at the air hubs, councillor. The air hubs are not a service facility in that sense of it, except for interaction. The water points are numerous in the arena itself and at all of the toilet locations, as well as other locations in the campsite. They're very freely available, very well signposted, and very well taken advantage of, actually. And all tested water, so it is all potable in that sense. The access to the medical support, I think we took it as a positive. We took it as a plus that people were encouraging each other. The look out for each other campaign was really strong among everybody, among the younger age group in particular. We took a positive, therefore, that more people went to be checked. We were actively pushing people to go and get checked, particularly if they had had any drug usage at all, and not to take a risk and in the thinking that they would probably be okay. So we were very active about pushing it. We're taking it as a positive, as a negative, rather than a negative. And I think the medics took the same view, actually, that it was great for more people to be coming through and to be reassured that they were actually okay.
Hinchcliffe, then, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the engagement from Festival Republic. It's really worthwhile for this committee. I think last time we met, the effectiveness of the drink spiking test kits was played down, and now we're hearing minimal are sold, and there were negative results from those sold. Are they so ineffective that you're considering just getting rid of them completely next year? And just on the Ask for Angela campaign, do you have any figures around the use of that? And without going into the confidentiality details, were the issues resolved by staff? Thanks, Chair.
So in terms of the drink spiking kits, we're able to test at the medical tent, and we'll continue to be able to do that. So that's a free service. If someone it turns up and they're suspected spiking, then they will get tested at our medical tent. So I think we will still continue to have that available always. But in terms of them being available to purchase, it's whether or not it's actually needed.
Yeah, I mean, we will continue to have them. It's just the capability of the ones that are for sale is just not as efficient as the ones in the medical centre. The ones in the medical centre take a little longer to give the results, whereas the ones for sale give you an automatic a relatively instant result, but it's not as dependable as the ones at the medical centre. The very few people, we've tested our staff, we've done research on our staff, etc., about whether they would use them, etc., etc. And in the main, people say they have no interest in using them, unfortunately. We will keep retailing them, but the take-up is always going to be likely to be very low. The offering at the medical centre is very much there because people really do come in sometimes believing they'd been spiked, haven't necessarily been spiked, but believing it. And whether they have or haven't, it's very clear that they need a test. And so they get tested for the chemicals in any spiking kit, but also looked after at the same time. So that's definitely a good way for us to continue. as for Angela, I'll let Lucy come back, but we did have some good successes on that.
Yeah, we did. I haven't got obviously we're not able to track exactly how many people asked for Angela across the weekend, but we did. There was one success story of a lady who hadn't actually heard of the campaign until seeing it at the festival, and then came forward, presented herself at one of the bars, and then that kicked into our procedure that we had in place to keep that person in a safe space and introduce our safeguarding coordinator to then investigate that further. We displayed it, the campaign and the Leeds specific poster throughout the festival, and it was utilised.
That particular person that came forward that hadn't been aware of it until then was actually in a long-term abusive relationship, and yeah.
Thank you for that. On the Ask for Angela stuff, I think, yeah, it's really welcome. Leeds Festival has a huge, support base. It's very clear from the amount of people that attend. So using the Ask for Angela campaign and making the publicity obviously is worthwhile. And thank you for clarifying on the test kits, because when we previously met, I don't think it was clear that the ones in the medical tent were any different to the ones that you were selling. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you for asking those questions, Councillor Etiquette. Very important questions. Councillor Ali, please.
Hi, Lucy. I just wanted to say we're pretty good at giving a kick now. I just wanted to say thank you. When we visited, the amount of planning that goes in to what you've done and your team. So when you do go back, please thank them. My question is around the lighting of the compound. So you've got 16 and 18-year-olds and single females that's walking around. I know it's been brought up by the Hackney Carriage. How do you measure lighting, or how? I mean, I saw the generators everywhere. Was this just where we were in the taxi part, or is it everywhere? Because we've not had any other people come back and say lighting is an issue, apart from here where people were standing for taxis. So I just want to ask around, because it's a safety concern if lighting's not adequate.
Councillor, we do the lighting is throughout all the campsite areas, all the public walkways. Effectively, all of the walkways that we have are similar to the roads and streets here in the city centre. They are our walkways, they are our movement channels, and they're all lit. We do lighting checks on all of the campsites on the Monday and Tuesday, the Sunday, Monday and Tuesday evenings prior to opening. And we go through all of that, we note it, we make sure that it is all adequately done, and we record the fact that we have done all of that. So it isn't just in the car parks and the taxi pickup, etc., etc. It's throughout the festival site, and it's something we've very much got a long-term commitment to. To have had. We think it's pretty successful.
So going forward, would it be possible, Melvin, to just have a look at the car parking facility where the pickup point was, or what the concern was from the trade, please?
Yes, we did have a couple of complaints that there were a couple of areas that weren't as well lit, and I think one or two of your officers fed back exactly the same. So that is on our agenda for the future, Councillor.
Any further questions? Okay. Excellent. Well, in that case, I'd like to say thank you for your attendance. Obviously, we'll continue with the meeting. We'll have the closed session, but whilst we're in public, thank you for your attendance. And again, thank you for everything that you've done. I just want to say and put on the record to the public that yes, we've been very thankful to Festival Republican officers for the work that they've done. That doesn't mean that we won't continue to work collaboratively and apply proper scrutiny to next year's festival. We recognise that any large public event is a dynamic thing, and it requires proper scrutiny each and every time an event is organised. So we'll continue to do that job. But credit where credit's due, and I think it's important that we recognise the work that's been done. Okay. we shall now move on then, members, to the safety advisory group members. Have we got a? Is there anybody that has a burning desire to speak first from the safety advisory group because they've got to go or anything? No? Okay, in that case, I'm going to go in the order that I've got on the papers in front of me, which is I'm going to invite the fire safety team first, please.
Thank you very much. In relation to the planning throughout this period, the information has been passed back in a timely fashion from Festival Republic. From West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Services point of view, this year we are relieved and certainly in whole support of the banning of live fires throughout the site to reduce that risk down. We had that one minor issue of reporting with Midland Fire, which has been discussed in the debrief process, which we'll take forward and we can incorporate that in future planning events. So we're comfortable around that. We had one minor issue around a vehicle being stopped within an agreed route, which has been picked up within the debriefing process. And again, I've been assured that will be picked up in the planning aspects for any future events around that. In relation to incidents attended on site, minimal impact to West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, the planning assumptions, the risk assessment and the provision provided by Midland Fire to deal with those incidents and the reduction in live fires on site, reducing the risk, has resulted in a positive step forward, and long may that continue. I think in terminology for planning future events and should incidents ever occur at an incident or a festival like this, some amendments and some modernisation around terminology for planning using Jessup principles, which are in agreed formats for all Cat 1, Cat 2 and partner organisations is useful. Some training around that would be beneficial for planners and something that potentially the fire service can help and support with going forward in those early phases of planning. But from the fire services point of view, there's very minimal to add on the back of what's already been discussed and what's been captured through the debriefing process. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions, members? No? Okay, well, there was a clear recommendation there, wasn't there? I wondered if Festival Republic could commit to taking that on board, please.
100%, Councillor Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, next then, please, is welfare and safeguarding. I think that's Yorkshire Ambulance Service, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning also. I'm Chris Fothergill from Yorkshire Ambulance Service. I'm an EPRR, Emergency Preparedness Resilience Response Manager. Part of my portfolio is to attend on the various safety advisory groups and to give advice, not restricted to, but mainly medical rather than safeguard and such. So I can just emphasise about the medical side. I'll break my kind of feedback into three phases: the delivery phase, the response phase and the recovery phase. Our main remit really is to understand the benefits that events bring to the local economy and the community, but also to ensure that an event organiser is cognizant of their duty to ensure there's minimal impact upon the statutory ambulance service and wider health. And I'm glad to report for 2023 this was the case. Lucy kindly shared her slides, which fits with the slides and data that was presented to myself by ETMS. I won't go into the granular detail, but the off-site transfers were minimal. And there was no call upon what we call BAU, business as usual. There was no calls for 999 response to the Yorkshire Ambulance Service that needed us to go to the festival. We are there 24/7 now. So again, Festival Republic took on some recommendations and they now source from the Yorkshire Ambulance Service an ambulance liaison officer. And we were there on the Thursday for the early birds and then from the Friday through to the Sunday, 24/7 cover. So the actual planning phase, it started early. So I put that down as good practice. I think we started, might even been January, February of this year. And that was mainly due to Festival Republic procuring a medical provider at an early stage. We was reassured that they'd gone to a previous provider that had done the Leeds Festival and numerous festivals before. So they were known to ourselves, which aids in that networking. Again, we was reassured that the company was CQC, Care Quality Commission registered, which is an important aspect in relation to off-site transfers and continued treatment of disease, injury and illness. So again, that was reassuring. We held several meetings. We obviously had our Safe Advisory Group meetings, but we also had an internal medical meeting where Elite EMS, the Acute Trust, the Leeds Teaching Hospital, the Integrated Care Boards, and ourselves met at our headquarters. So that was, again, good practice, and I hope that continues for next year. As far as the delivery phase, the medical resourcing was to current guidance. We used the purple guide. So at the time, it was classed as a tier 4. There has been some slight changes this year to the tiering of sites, but it was to guidance. In fact, in some aspects, it was over guidance. Having the X-ray on site greatly improved the ability to reduce those off-site transfers. I know a question was raised, how many people stayed on site after an X-ray? That really is a decision taken by the medical team. You know, there's doctors, consultants, registrars, radiographers, all on site, in essence, a mini hospital. So that conversation will take place between the patient and the medical team. And there's improvement around the command and control for 2023. I know the fire service have discussed their GESIP, but Elite EMS are more than aware of the GESIP principles. They use the same terminology, and they had pre-identified some of the major incident roles that we don't often see in medical plans. The medical plans were really good. So that again was reassuring. The event control was a great improvement for this year. It was much lighter. It just sounded less noisy. The flooring was far better. So that was a feedback we got from our ambulance liaison officers. I carried out an assurance visit. I often carry out an assurance visit. Some people call them a during performance inspection. I see them more as a visit. I normally do them on the first day of the event at a multi-day event. I was unable to do so. I actually did the assurance visit on the Sunday, which I think was a good thing to do, because often multi-stage events, you might see that kind of slacking off and what have you, but that was not the case. And it's rare that I do a visit where I don't find any kind of red or amber concerns. Lots of good practice, a few minor tweaks, but nothing that couldn't be sorted out on the day. I'm particularly cognizant of the welfare of the medical staff. They were all very proactive. I actually went around later on in just normal civilian clothing, asking for medical aid and where I could find help and what have you. And everybody seemed to be well cognizant of their roles and responsibilities. And again, I think that's due to Elite EMS not subcontracting. Quite a few medical providers subcontract other roles into their company, but I didn't see any case of that. Lucy shared the casualty data sets, and obviously I can't go into it, Jury, really in any more granular detail, but the kind of main presentations and demographics are what we expect of this kind of event, so there's nothing there really to flag up. I mentioned the hospital conveyance. Again, there was no call upon the Yorkshire Ambulance Service to site as such. As far as a recovery phase, a debrief took place. Elite EMS shared all their data with us, which was great, so we could compare our numbers, and the numbers did match. Really just going forward, just again to start that early engagement. It really helps us. We're a busy ambulance service. We're a very small department. So, that early engagement really helped. So those are the main parts, really. I suppose going forward, 2024, 2025, the police might have some more to add to this, but there's still some uncertainty around the protect duty in Martin's Law and whether it will apply to open air events. But I can share with members if they want. There's a very good presentation given by a chap called Russell Phillips, who was very much embedded in the counter-terrorism and the protect duty. And one line I've picked out there from his comment, it's a 30-minute talk, is that event organisers, although we're unsure where Martin's Law will sit, they should look at it in a more proactive way. And especially there's a mention around bleed kits. the Manchester Arena. A lot of the people died there because of blood loss. So there's actually a recommendation there to think about additional bleed kits at large events. Obviously, the medical provider will have that equipment, but we are seeing some more proactive approaches where some sites are buying these kits already, and that they can be distributed to stewards and around the site. As I say, it's more of a watching brief, really, when Martin's Law does finally land. No, like I say, it's a lot of positives, really, from our side. And I think that's really due to networking and early engagement. I'd just like to thank Festival Republic, really, for that.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Any questions, members? No? Okay, I think there was a couple of things that I'll ask in closed session to Festival Republic, but I don't think you could speak any more highly of the early engagement and the benefit to the festival. So I just wondered if we can get that commitment again, please.
We can, Chair, very much. And it may be an opportunity for Lucy to come back on Councillor Down's point in terms of the number of personnel, number of customers that didn't go to hospital as a result of the X-ray.
Yes, please do.
So this just shows the total hospital avoidances. So this was people that were able to treat on site and then not have to transfer off site. Of the off-site transfers, only one of those was related to a dislocation, and therefore of the 27 X-rays, 26 of those stayed on site and one was off site.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Traffic management next then, please. And we can have taxi and private hire licensing included in that as well, please.
Good morning, it's Nick Gardner from the traffic team at Leeds City Council. As it's been touched on earlier, it's generally accepted that the traffic management plan that we've established over the last 2 years is working, and it allows us to shut York Road to eastbound traffic for the duration of the festival period, and that does work well. We didn't receive any complaints again this year, which was the same as last year, which is a surprise from previous years gone by. Going forward, it's been mentioned about the request from the taxi trade. I think it's generally felt that's better dealt with in another meeting, a working group meeting, which I would welcome ward members to be involved with that. And we just need to take very careful steps here in that we can maintain the traffic management plan in its current form, in that it is generally accepted it's working well. We don't really want it to stop working well. So careful steps there, but I'm happy to be involved with that and talk through with all agencies what tweaks could be done to help in that area. The same said about the issues faced on the Sunday evening. Happy to be put forward to help with National Highways and West Yorkshire Police about the situation there. We sign over authority to National Highways to manage some of the roads within Leeds City Council's area, but again, I'm happy to work with that. So all in all, generally, it's been a good year for us in the festival.
Thank you very much, Nick. Members, any questions? No, I think it's an important point about inviting board members to that meeting as well. So can we make sure that happens? Yeah, thank you. Okay, taxi private hire licensing then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Nick Hamill from Taxi and Private Hire Licensing. I'll just go through some of the feedback that we received from our officers. We were in attendance at the festival from the Wednesday through to the Sunday. So it was noted by officers that Friday did seem slightly unorganised, generally with lighting, inadequate areas, minimal staffing at the taxi ranks, and there being no Wi-Fi booster. However, Saturday and Sunday were a vast improvement on Friday, as more staff and stewards were allocated to the taxi and private hire areas. Lighting was moved to more appropriate areas, and the Wi-Fi booster Starlink appeared to be working. we did know that lighting could still be improved in certain areas, and signage for drivers coming into the site, particularly pointing them in the right direction for their particular pens, could be improved. Also, I think that there would usually be stewards in that area, and there weren't this year, which that might have added to that issue there. Other feedback received was that some of the stewards in that area and in the car park areas spoke very limited English, and we'd received feedback from festival attendees to say that they were struggling to obtain help and advice from these stewards in relation to where they could go back to the vehicles and towards the taxi rank. The taxi rank queue cleared much faster than in other years, and I think this was down to the hard work of the stewards from Festival Republic, but also from the volunteers from the Hackney Carriage Trade who turned up to assist on all 3 nights. It was also helped by the fact that drivers returned much more often this year to pick up passengers. Further to this, on the back of some of the work that we did at the festival, the team are currently investigating a number of suspected offences involving licensed and unlicensed drivers from incidents that took place over the festival weekend. I'd just like to say, on the whole, the feedback received from the trade, from customers, was very positive. So thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions, members? Yes, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. As was mentioned by our colleagues from taxi and private hire licensing, can I just ask, you mentioned there was a number of incidents being investigated. Can you just elaborate on comparisons to previous years and where we currently stand?
Yeah, there's less than 10 being investigated. I'd say there's half a dozen. In terms of how that is from previous years, it's probably roughly the same as previous years. And just to tell you that the offences that we're currently investigating relate to overcharging and offences relating to unlawful plying for hire.
Okay. A few recommendations there as well, Festival Republic, if we could note those. Is that okay? Yes, thank you. Also, thank you to volunteers from the Hackney Carriage Trade, and if there were volunteers from the private hire trade as well, thank you for your efforts on improving the event. Next up then, please, is we've got public transport down. Anybody from public transport here? No? Next one then, noise nuisance, please. Is there anyone from noise? Yeah, smash him.
Thanks. Morning, Chair. Yeah, this year, as the council, we only received 5 complaints, which in the scheme of things over the whole of the event, it's negligible, really. There were some issues, predominantly, we think, because of the weather, directing it down towards Aberford. But we had officers out there, and the consultants employed by Festival Republic were very responsive and managed to get levels reduced whilst on site. So yeah, it was probably a bit more challenging than last year, but it was good response. And we have a good relationship. It's for a number of years now with the consultants. So yeah, it's no issues really in response to noise nuisance.
Yes, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that update on noise. I just wanted to say that I do think we've got to be very careful with figures, reports of noise complaints, because I had a lot of residents mentioning to me that they didn't feel that if they did raise it would actually be dealt with. So I do feel that we've got to take it with a pinch of salt, but I do appreciate at the same time that those figures are constant or down. I just want to ask just generally in terms of maintaining that, we do have a regular concern in our particular community, as I represent the Harewood ward, whereby residents receive their letters not always at the potential time that they may be able to digest them very quickly, and sometimes can be the details that they need are quite convoluted when they actually just want to find the contact details to be able to report or note things. Can we just make sure in the future that that's absolutely central to everything that goes out, and that we have a regular time in which those letters are actually going out? Thank you.
Not sure who needs to respond there. Councillor Harrington, do you want to say anything? You're invited to come up since you're part of the council.
Just to say that the meeting that we have with parish councils that are for all the wards that are affected by the travel plan and the festival, the letters, we worked incredibly hard, and I know Lucy's worked incredibly hard to make sure that the letters go out and are in time with all the parish council newsletters as well, to try and get them out as early as we possibly can. And we consult those parish council members about the content of the letters as well. And they have an opportunity to feed back to Lucy and her team to say, this isn't very clear. Can you make it clearer? Can you specify a little bit different? So if there are residents that have got that issue, it might be an idea for them to feed it back to their individual parish councils as well, because we can take that forward next time. But thank you. I mean, I think the only other thing I would say that Festival Republic have worked incredibly hard with that group over the last 2 years, and we have seen some really, really good changes to the travel plan. And I take on board the highways officers' comments that we are actually involved in those meetings, and it is really, really worthwhile. And I do thank Festival Republic for that. Thank you.
Just in relation to residents' concerns of reporting and not getting any action, we have officers on site throughout the night. So they work throughout the night. So if calls are made to the council's out of hours noise service, then they are directed, the officers are contacted by the out of hours noise service to go and deal with those complaints at the time. Likewise, when they're reported through to Festival Republic, we were constantly in touch with them throughout the night. So just for reassurance for residents, if you let them know that if they do complain, they will be addressed there.
Excellent. We'll note that. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak on this? No. Thank you. Then we'll move on to public safety. SIA and the police, I think, if that's okay. So I don't know who wants to go first. I'm happy either way. Let's go with the SIA first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Good morning, all. The SIA felt that the security companies and operatives that worked at Leeds Festival appeared to give a good overall account of themselves. The SIA have not, to my knowledge, received any complaints relating to the conduct of any security operatives at Leeds Festival. At the accreditation point, all operatives were patient whilst waiting to be processed and gain accreditation. There were no incidents there, despite some long waiting times and large queues, which can obviously be frustrating. This could probably be managed better by the main security companies and their labour providers by offering staggered times for accreditation. But I guess that this has probably been looked at previously, and it's very difficult to control with so many security operatives and companies being involved and travelling from various parts of the country. There were some security operatives working in more niche roles, such as the operatives with drugs detection dogs and pathway risk management, who did not need to go through the full security accreditation points. Therefore, their licenses were not checked by the SIA, and moving forward, it would be good to close that loophole in the future. When walking around the festival and viewing security operatives undertaking their roles, there appeared to be no obvious issues, and unlike the previous year, unlicensed stewards were not engaging in security activity which is licensable, such as searching bags, body searches, etc. Standards appeared to be good, and the overall approach seemed to be friendly but assertive where necessary. Through the various and regular SAG meetings and the documentation being posted onto the Resilience Direct website, relevant information has been available to the SIA at an earlier stage, which allowed us to engage with the security companies involved sooner than had been done previously. It was also very useful for the SIA to be invited to the security briefing held at Bramham Park in the run-up to the event. Finally, I would like to add that communications between the SIA and Festival Republic were much improved from previous years, and we look forward to this continuing in the future. And that's all we've got to add, really.
Perfect, thank you. Do you want to quickly explain, because we have people that might not know what the SIA team is?
So the SIA, we are the regulators for the private security industry. Probably the most common persons that the SIA deal with are door supervisors. You will see their licenses displayed on their arms outside licensed premises, but we also regulate security guards and other issues such as CCTV operatives, and we regulate them by a licensing procedure. Stewarding is not something that falls within our remit, and that is something that I'm not sure actually where the stewards are produced from in terms of Leeds Festival, but that's not anything that we conduct checks on, because that's not licensable. We are an arm's length government department sponsored by the Home Office.
Excellent, thank you very much, Ivan. I've got a quick question for you around, there was an issue at the last year, and a lot of this was due to COVID, around engagement with yourself and people I suppose security guards getting hired late in the day, and it was difficult to do the checks. Has that all been resolved this year as we've seen an improvement with the supply of security guards post-pandemic?
I would say that is the case, that the numbers are improving again. There was obviously an issue whereby security operatives were not necessarily required because they were the venues were not open for them to be needed to work at. So a lot of them obviously found alternative employment. I think the numbers are back up again. I think at this moment in time we've got something like 450,000 license holders, which is the highest number that we've ever had as far as I'm aware. So I do believe that problem should have been overcome, certainly from the COVID period.
And that played out, did it, at the festival, and that people were hired in advance, so you were able to have more time to check their SIA cards and stuff. Yeah, excellent. Members, any questions? No? Okay. Then I shall move on to Superintendent Wood then, please. And if we just remember, we probably will have a closed session to allow you to talk a little bit more about what happened at the festival. So just, you can keep it brief if you prefer.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was the Police Silver Commander for Public Order and Public Safety for this year's event, and will be for next year's event. I certainly concur with everything that was presented earlier by Festival Republic and what other colleagues have said. Just some headline crime figures. There were 120 crimes recorded for this year's event. To give it some context, the previous year there were 145, so 25 fewer than last year. Because the event didn't happen in 2020 and was still affected by COVID in 2021, you really have to go back 4 years to get the next comparison. And in 2019, there were 234. So effectively half the crimes of 4 years ago, which I think speaks to a pretty safe event this year. There were 3 recorded offences of rape, 8 other sexual offences. We recorded 7 spiking offences and 15 assaults. And there were no crimes or volumes or patterns or series of crimes that caused me any undue concern. We made 72 total arrests at the event. That included 59 arrests for drugs offences. 4 of those 59 were for possession of drugs, and the remaining 55 were for some form of supply crime, drug supply offences. In 8 of those 59 cases, there were a sufficient threshold to remand those people immediately onto a remand wing with charges. The majority of those 8 have already been to court, pled guilty, and received significant sentences. Some have received up to 3 years imprisonment. The remainder of all the ones that were not remandable are all still under investigation with suspects on bail, and will likely proceed to charges when the investigations are fully complete. Of the 59 people arrested for drugs offences, only 14 of those resided in the West Yorkshire area. The majority of people resided in other force areas like Greater Manchester, Merseyside and South Yorkshire. So one thing I intend to do is liaise a little more with those police forces in the lead up to next year's festival. Like Festival Republic have talked to, there was more robust searching at ingress points. We had a police presence at ingress points as well, as a visible deterrence. I think next year we plan to do a little bit more work in the car parks as well, a visible presence in the car parks. Festival Republic had increased use of drugs, dogs and discreet searches, which we supported where there were drugs finds. Then we supported with detective constables to triage what the response should be. And as they've mentioned, we worked jointly with them on security operations, particularly on campsites, which led to many of the arrests that I've outlined. For the first time, we had a West Yorkshire police officer directly within the Festival Republic control room as well. In terms of the security that Ivan's just talked through, we did police, in effect, vetting checks on 4,999 people, just one shy of 5,000 checks we did, which resulted in 36 rejections of staff. Those were people with previous convictions which were unsuitable or potential impending prosecutions. As mentioned, Festival Republic took a more stringent approach to ejections. They were typically people who were sort of repetitive, antisocial behaviour, often intoxicated, and our perspective was this did improve the tone of the event, in effect removing troublemakers, for want of a better phrase, at an earlier opportunity. I've nothing of note regarding any community issues or roads policing issues. The egress buses worked extremely well. They're like clockwork, and I agree that Festival Republic should publicise those as a really good method of getting people away safely from the event. And I know Chris mentioned the Martin's Law aspect. Just to reiterate, we do have a police counter-terrorism security coordinator allocated to the event each year, and he comes and he'll obviously advise if there's any amendments that need to be made going forward with any changes. That's all from me.
That's great. Thank you very much, Superintendent. I'll bring in Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just you mentioned some reported rapes. Can you tell us what happened? What happened? What was the outcome in terms from the perspective of the victim and the perpetrator? Thank you.
I don't have those details to hand, Councillor, to go through sort of case level detail of whether we made arrests in those cases or what stage they're at. But I can do that perhaps in a different forum if that's okay.
Are you able to comment? And again, it might be something you need to do afterwards. Comparing kind of numbers of criminal acts, kind of year on year. That would be. If you don't have it now, that's fine. But I suppose it's interesting to see the trajectory the event is on or not.
I've got the breakdown, like I said, of the crimes that are listed for this year. 25 fewer than last year, almost half 4 years ago. Arrests were certainly up. We've not made that number of arrests for some time. We made 50 the year before, and as I say, made 72 this year. Allegations of rape are very consistent. 3 this year, 4 the year before, 4 the year before that, and 4 in 2019. Spiking reports were slightly down. There were 7 this year versus 12 the year before. And theft allegations were down as well. We had 140 theft reports in 2019, and they've fallen steadily. We had 54 in 2021, 48 in 2022, and this year just 39 theft reports. So the trajectory generally and the patterns indicate the measures that are being taken are gradually year on year making for a safer festival event.
Okay, thank you, members. I think that is just about it. I think we've got Lisa and Rachel here from LCC. Would you like to say anything?
Hi, it's Rachel Jarrett from the Safety Advisory Group. Obviously, we'll continue to support Festival Republic and the SAG partners with the coordination of the meetings and the publications and the feedback of all the documentation for the planning process for next year's event. So just looking forward to doing that if there's any questions.
So you're from the Safety Advisory Group, are you? So the sort of coordinator from Leeds City Council. Okay. Have any questions? No? Okay. Is there anybody that I've missed out? I can't see that there is. Dan Byrne? Yes, thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So Dan Byrne, Public Health Lead for Drugs and Alcohol, and also the Chair of the Reading and Leeds Festival Advice and Campaigns team, who developed the Look Out for Each Other campaign. Just to reiterate really what Lucy said earlier, the campaign was really successful this year. We had all the animations on the big screens between all the acts. It was used extensively online, particularly on their social media channels and on the festival app. In addition, it was also advertised in more physical formats, so at all 16 air hubs, as well as on the temporary tattoos we saw earlier, and on the waterproof mobile phone pouches that were given out, which contained some of the key messages of that campaign. One thing this year that was particularly effective was the Flockler approach, which is where people were able to use the hashtag of the campaign and upload photos and comments, which was used really heavily on social media, but also really popular because they could be picked to go on the big screen, which made the campaign really kind of come out for on a completely different level this year. In terms of going forward with the fact, so we're due to have a task and finish group in January to review messages and animations. It's something we do annually just to make sure it's all fresh and up to date. And we'll continue to work on that, as well as the dissemination of the campaign and methods to do that, so that in next year, the 2024 festival, the campaign's even better to improve it. Thank you, Chair.
That's really great. Thank you for that. And thank you for everybody for all the hard work. Members, any questions? No? We'll have a 5-minute comfort break. Oh, yeah. Chris.
Yeah, I'm just cognizant that on our last meeting, it was mentioned that something was picked up in 2022 in relation to ice and cooling of patients. That's an error. So
say that again, Chris, because it.
Yeah, I believe in our last meeting, it was mentioned on 2022 that a recommendation was picked up about the ability to cool patients and lack of ice on site. That's not the case, so that needs to be omitted from any minutes. The actual recommendation was ambient cooling of the medical facilities. I think 2022 was a hot period, and I think there was just some concerns about the ability to cool the medical facility, and that did take place.
So is that in the minutes from? Yeah, well, we'll give Helen a few minutes during the comfort break to see if it's in the official minutes, and then we can change that. And note that you would like the change, and I can completely understand why that is. So if I have a 5-minute comfort break, please, and then we'll come back for the closed session before we carry on with the rest of the agenda. Thank you. Okay. Are we all sat comfortably? So we're going to be moving into private session now then, please. Helen, can you advise who can and can't stay? All the SAG partners have been advised can stay, obviously excluded. Okay, any more comments from anybody sat around the table? No? Mr. Ben, you had something you'd like to say?
Chair, yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I did want to just mention that this is Lucy's last meeting around this table. Unfortunately, she is moving on from this festival. I will take the chance to publicly thank her for all the work that she's done. I know she's worked really closely with a lot of your colleagues and councillors and staff, and very much appreciate that. She is being replaced as event manager by Sarah Tombolka, who is sat to her left. Sarah has been with the company, with Festival Republic, for an awful long time, and is stepping up to do that. Sarah, like Lucy, isn't from Yorkshire, and I'm sure she's very disappointed by that. But she's very welcome here to take over. To my right is Hannah Corrigan, who is from Yorkshire, who will lead on the licensing aspects of it. So I just really wanted to thank Lucy for all of her participation in it, really. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ben. And yes, we'd like to extend our thanks and gratitude as a licensing committee for all your hard work, Lucy. It's been a pleasure working with you. You've always been really responsive. You always respond to our emails straight away and pick up the phone, and we can't ask for much more than that. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. And I wish as well a lot of success to Sarah and Hannah. I'm sure you'll be great and welcome. Okay, we're going to turn now then to the recommendations on page 19 of the agenda. Unless members have any other comments. Presume they don't, then the licensing committee is asked to hear from Melvin Ben and representatives of Festival Republic and partners of the Safety Advisory Group, SAG, following the Leeds Festival 2023. Are we happy to note the information? Yeah. Okay. In that case, that's moved, and we shall move on to agenda item number 8. Okay, and I think that's Safety Advisory Group partners and Festival Republic. You can go now if you wish. And thank you very much for your attendance, all of you. You've done a great job. We really appreciate it. And thank you again for coming. Okay, right. Agenda item number 8. So basically, Councillor Flynn had asked us to look at this last year. It's how we sign off the event management plan. I'll let Matthew talk through it. I don't think we need chapter and verse, just a quick oversight, and then we can make a decision. If members really do want to discuss it because there's an interest in it, then fine, we can sit here and discuss it. I'm open to it, but I suspect that you'll probably be happy with the way things currently run. Yes, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this really stems from the last licensing committee meeting on the 1st of August, where the committee members considered updates on the progress leading up to this year's event. Part of the resolution was for a report to be presented, which would give the committee an opportunity to review the process for the development and sign off the event management plan, which is in accordance with the condition on the licence that reads the event management plan, and any revisions to the event management plan must be approved by the licensing authority prior to the festival. So the report advises that the event management plan is an evolving document. The final version is not normally available until very close to the start of the festival, and the usual process is for the licensing committee to delegate approval to the chief officer, who usually approves the event management plan in the earlier part of the festival week, subject to acceptable feedback from all partners of the safety advisory group. And the recommendations are for the committee to consider and agree to either continue with the existing arrangements and delegate approval, or to consider alternative options. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think there's been a lot of discussion about this. The alternative option was essentially around having a licensing subcommittee just before the event. It would be down to the licensing subcommittee to sign it off, which, I mean, we've not discussed it as a committee really, so I don't think we'd be in a position to be able to approve something like that now. So we'd have to form a subgroup to discuss it. If the committee wants to go with that, that's fine. I'm not comfortable as chair to make that the committee can make an informed decision on changing things at this moment in time. Obviously, you've heard what the current arrangement is, which is delegated to John to sign off the event management plan. There were concerns around not having access to the event management plan in a timely manner prior to the event. We've changed that so that we can have the access online as it's an evolving document. Also, we've brought the licensing committee forward so that we can ask questions at the licensing committee in August, and then if there are concerns, then Festival Republic and SAG partners have time to insist with Festival Republic make those changes. So we have addressed those concerns, I think, adequately, rather than needing to go to a licensing subcommittee. But I am all ears, and it's down to you guys. Yes, Rick.
Yeah, I think I was one of the ones that expressed a little bit of concern about the way we were discussing this so close to the event this year, and we felt it was a fait accompli. We basically had to say yes because of where we were. Having seen everything that's gone off, etc., as usual, it seems to have gone off okay. I just wonder if we are to continue in the fashion that we are doing, whether the meeting prior to the issuing of the consent, which is delegated to John, we get the SAG partners here as well, so that if there are any issues that are raised, it's very useful to have them all here today for the debrief, because we could hear all the different elements. And I think that's very useful for us. And I don't think we've had that level of involvement just before giving it. So we've had it this time on the debrief. And I just wonder if one of the things I'd like to suggest might be that we get them along, so that if there are any issues, we can actually clarify it with them.
It's a good point. I thought, well, they were all invited. I just don't think everybody turned up. Is that right?
At the licensing committee in August, was it the 1st of August? All SAG members did attend for that meeting. Yes. Yes. Only one or two, if that. Yeah. And then if we are aware, we do collate who is attending. If it's we're alerted to any agencies that can't attend for any reason, we ask them to give them a written update, which will circulate in advance.
Yeah, my apologies.
It's just an informal conversation at this point. And as I mentioned, we did bring it forward anyway, so that it was earlier this year than it reckons to be. The problem is, of course, that you can't have it too early because nobody's finalised anything yet. So you it's all hypothetical at that point. So it's a balance between close to the event, so arrangements have been made, but not too far in advance, so that actually no decisions have been made yet. We can look at bringing it forward a little bit more if you like.
I think it's trying to get the balance right, and because it's such a big event, and because we've had issues in the past, and I just wonder if it's a question of perhaps then if there are changes that are being made, because this year the event seems to have been very successful. There doesn't seem to be too much that's come out of the debrief of any concern, so it looks like it was almost spot on. But you can always improve. And I think you could almost say, well, you can have the event management plan for next year from this year because it worked. But if you think that there's ways of improving or tweaking it, can you let us know what you're considering early so that we can then be aware of that, so that if we think there's any concerns with that, we can address that. I think it's about trying to get the basics right and in place as early as possible. Obviously, the final sign-off has to come very late in the day with this type nature of event because it's so massive, and I do understand that. I organise much smaller events, and we don't get everything finalised until sort of the week before, and it's the nature of the beast. But I just think if we know now for some of our events what we're going to be doing differently next time, so we've already got a mind to put that in place. I just think it's useful for us. So the pressure isn't on us to say, we've now got these changes, but you've got to sign it off now. Otherwise, we cancel the event, which isn't going to happen.
So there's two things I think I'd say to that, and I agree, and I share your concerns. The first thing is, when did we get access to the Safety Advisory Group document? What's it called online? We got that pretty early, didn't we? Before August.
I was just going to mention actually, Chair, because obviously there's there might be new members, but the existing members will have access to Resilience Direct. And usually the first draft EMP goes on round about March. And also what we do receive through the SAG is a summary of changes to the EMP based on the previous year. So we can arrange for members to have access to that as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, and that was a change that was brought in, wasn't it, last year, that we had access to the EMP earlier. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Stephen.
I just think from my point of view, being a new member of the licensing committee, it does seem like for us to do a subcommittee to sign off on it because of how close to the event. I mean, obviously this didn't get signed off until, was it the day before or something? It got fully signed off because of the site visit. I think it's unrealistic in a way for us to organise a subcommittee and sit and do that. But again, I agree. The more involvement we can have in the build up to it, and any changes, drastic changes that are put in, if we feel there needs to be a subcommittee to discuss this or a full committee that is arranged, then I think this, and it does, I think from the two meetings I've had with Festival Republic, they do seem to take on board and learn year on year and improve, especially over the last 2 years, they seem to have made drastic changes and improvements to safety and things. So I think, I think if we keep the relationship going as it is at the moment, but, give them the opportunity to come back to us when they feel they need to, or when we feel they need to, I think that seems to be working quite well.
Yes, Kev. Thank you, Stephen.
It might be of some reassurance to members that the delegation of powers to officers is always subject to the policy steer that members give. And what I would point out is that in the August meeting, if something was presented that gave members serious cause for concern, they could offer guidance to John when he's exercising his delegated powers as to what they expect to see in his judgment has been done to address those issues before he signs it off. So the August meeting does give you an opportunity within the constitution to guide how those discretionary powers ought to be exercised.
Yeah. Kevin, I think it's worth John mentioning, perhaps saying a little bit about how you do take note of what's said in that August meeting and how you ensure that those changes are seen in the EMP.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'm satisfied that the process that we have in place works well, and it's evolved and matured over the years over the Leeds Festival as we've gone from year to year. From my perspective, anything that's picked up or anything that's mentioned during the August meeting before we come to sign off the event management plan is transcribed into a table which the Safety Advisory Group all sign off on before I finally sign off the event management plan. So that gives an opportunity for anything that's picked up at the August meeting to ensure that it's been signed off, and for any other outstanding actions that SAG members are concerned about to be signed off before I sign the whole plan off at the site visit each year. So no issues from us on the procedure or process for doing it, and I'm satisfied that anything that is picked up at the August meeting is fully documented and signed off before I sign off the event management plan on behalf of all of you using my delegated powers.
Great, thanks for that, Sean. Also, if people do want to meet semi-informally, as a group to go through the event management plan with officers leading up to that August meeting, I'm happy to arrange that and give the event management plan more scrutiny. Right, unless we've got any objections, we're going to move to the recommendations. So recommendation A is to continue with the existing arrangements and delegate approval of the final event management plan to the Chief Officer, Elections and Regulatory, or to consider alternative options. I'm going to recommend A, but it's up to members. Can I have a show of hands for A, please? Okay, show of hands for B. Okay, then that's carried at A, and can continue as we are. So moving on to agenda item number 9, please. Okay, who's introducing this report? Sorry, is that you, Matthew? Or you?
Yeah,
I don't think we need lots. Thanks.
Sorry, so following the tragic death of a young person at the 2022 edition of Leeds Festival, the senior coroner for West Yorkshire East served a Regulation 28 report to prevent future deaths on the licensing authority. The senior coroner also served a copy on Festival Republic, West Yorkshire Police, the Home Office and the State for Culture, Media and Sport. A copy of the Regulation 28 report is appended to the agenda as an exempt item at Appendix A. In response, Leeds City Council has drafted a response that's been prepared for the committee to consider, which is provided at the exempt item at Appendix B. And the 3 recommendations for the licensing committee are asked to note the content of the Regulation 28 report, to consider the content of the draft response on behalf of Leeds City Council, and then also to authorise the chair on behalf of the licensing committee to respond to the senior coroner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. There's been a lot of work in the background to get to this point, including attending coroner's inquest, and I'd like to thank Hayley and Kev and all the entertainment licensing team that have been involved in all of this. It was not an easy thing to do, but I think there's been some good recommendations from the Reg 28 report, and it's important that Leeds Festival have taken those on board, and we've seen actually that we're getting better results and better, safer festivals as a result of that. Are we happy to move to the recommendations, or anybody want to discuss that? No, we'll move to the recommendations then, please. Are we happy to go with the recommendations? Yes, thank you very much. And in that case, we'll move to agenda item number 10, and that is the next committee meeting, which will be on the 23rd of January 2024. And that concludes today's business. Thank you, everybody. Oh yeah, happy Christmas, happy New Year, all of that.